core labor and environmental standards in the agreement. We will do everything we can to make it enforceable, which it is not now. We will stop the kind of constant sniping at our protections for our workers that can come from foreign companies because they have the authority to try to sue to overturn what we do to keep our workers safe. This is rightly a big issue in Ohio. And I have laid out my criticism, but in addition, my plan for actually fixing NAFTA. Again, I have received a lot of incoming criticism from Senator Obama. And the Cleveland Plain Dealer examined Senator Obama's attacks on me regarding NAFTA and said they were erroneous. So I would hope that, again, we can get to a debate about what the real issues are and where we stand, because we do need to fix NAFTA. It is not working. It was, unfortunately, heavily disadvantaging many of our industries, particularly manufacturing. I have a record of standing up for that, of chairing the manufacturing caucus in the Senate, and I will take a tough position on these trade agreements.
Senator, thank you. Before we turn the questioning over to Tim Russert, Senator Obama.
Well, I think that it is inaccurate for Senator Clinton to say that she's always opposed NAFTA. In her campaign for Senate, she said that NAFTA, on balance, had been good for New York and good for America. I disagree with that. I think that it did not have the labor standards and environmental standards that were required in order to not just be good for Wall Street, but also be good for Main Street. And if you travel through Youngstown and you travel through communities in my home state of Illinois, you will see entire cities that have been devastated as a consequence of trade agreements that were not adequately structured to make sure that U.S. workers had a fair deal. Now, I think that Senator Clinton has shifted positions on this and believes that we should have strong environmental standards and labor standards, and I think that's a good thing. But when I first moved to Chicago in the early 80s, and I saw steel workers who had been laid off of their plants, black, white, and Hispanic, and I worked on the streets of Chicago to try to help them find jobs, I saw then that the net costs of many of these trade agreements, if they're not properly structured, can be devastating. And as President of the United States, I intend to make certain that every agreement that we sign has the labor standards, the environmental standards, and the safety standards that are going to protect not just workers, but also consumers. We can't have toys with lead paint in them that our children are playing with. We can't have medicines that are actually making people more sick instead of better because they're produced overseas. We have to stop providing tax breaks for companies that are shipping jobs overseas and give those tax breaks to companies that are investing here in the United States of America. And if we do those things, then I believe that we can actually get Ohio back on the path of growth and jobs and prosperity. If we don't, then we're going to continue to see the kind of deterioration that we've seen economically here in this state.
I want to ask you both about NAFTA because the record, I think, is clear. And I want to, Senator Clinton, Senator Obama said that you did say in 2004 that on balance NAFTA has been good for New York and America. You did say that. When President Clinton signed this bill, and this was after he negotiated 2 new side agreements for labor and environment, President Clinton said it would be a force for economic growth and social progress. You said in '96 it was proving its worth as free and fair trade. You said that in 2000 it was a good idea that took political courage. So your record is pretty clear. Based on that, and what you're now expressing your discomfort with it, in the debate that Al Gore had with Ross Perot, Al Gore said the following: if you don't like NAFTA and what it's done, we can get out of it in 6 months. The president can say to Canada and Mexico, we are out. This has not been a good agreement. Will you as president say, we are out of NAFTA in 6 months?
I have said that I will renegotiate NAFTA, so obviously you'd have to say to Canada and Mexico that that's exactly what we're going to do. But in fairness...
So let me be clear.
Yes, I am clear.
You will get out, you will notify Mexico and Canada, NAFTA is gone in 6 months.
No, I will say we will opt out of NAFTA unless we renegotiate it. And we renegotiate it on terms that are favorable to all of America. But let's be fair here, Tim. There are lots of parts of New York that have benefited, just like there are lots of parts of Texas that have benefited. The problem is in places like upstate New York, places like Youngstown, Toledo, and others throughout Ohio that have not benefited. And if you look at what I have been saying, it has been consistent. You know, Senator Obama told the farmers of Illinois a couple of years ago that he wanted more trade agreements.
We're going to get to Senator Obama,
NAFTA.
but I want to stay on your comments because this was something that you wrote about as a real success for your husband. You said it was good on balance for New York and America in 2004, and now you're in Ohio. And your words are much different, Senator. The record is very clear.
Well, you don't have all the record because you can go back and look at what I've said consistently. And I haven't just said things. I have actually voted to toughen trade agreements, to try to put more teeth into our enforcement mechanisms, and I will continue to do so. But you know, Tim, when you look at what the Cleveland Plain Dealer said when they examined the kind of criticism that Senator Obama was making of me, it's not me saying it, they said it was erroneous. And it was erroneous because it didn't look at the entire picture, both of what I've said and what I've done. But let's talk about what we're going to do. It is not enough just to criticize NAFTA, which I have, and for some years now. I have put forth a very specific plan about what I would do. And it does include telling Canada and Mexico that we will opt out unless we renegotiate the core labor and environmental standards, not side agreements, but core agreements, that we will enhance the enforcement mechanism, and that we will have a very clear view of how we're going to review NAFTA going forward to make sure it works, and we're going to take out the ability of foreign companies to sue us because of what we do to protect our workers. I would also say that you can go back and look at from the very beginning. I think David Gergen was on TV today, remembering that I was very skeptical about it. It has worked in some parts of America. It has not worked in Ohio. It has not worked in upstate New York. And since I've been in the Senate, neither of us voted on this. That wasn't something either of us got to cast an independent vote on. Since I have been in the Senate, I have worked to try to ameliorate the impact of these trade agreements.
But let me button this up. Absent the changes you're suggesting, you are willing to opt out of NAFTA in 6 months.
I'm confident that as president, when I say we will opt out unless we renegotiate, we will be able to renegotiate.
Senator Obama, you did in 2004 talk to farmers and suggest that NAFTA had been helpful. The Associated Press today ran a story about NAFTA saying that you have been consistently ambivalent towards the issue. Simple question. Will you, as president, say to Canada and Mexico, this has not worked for us, we are out?
I will make sure that we renegotiate in the same way that Senator Clinton talked about. And I think actually Senator Clinton's answer on this one is right. I think we should use the hammer of a potential opt-out as leverage to ensure that we actually get labor and environmental standards that are enforced. And that is not what has been happening so far. That is something that I have been consistent about. I have to say, Tim, with respect to my position on this, you know, when I ran for the United States Senate, the Chicago Tribune, which was adamantly pro-NAFTA, noted that in their endorsement of me, they were endorsing me despite my strong opposition to NAFTA. And that conversation that I had with the Farm Bureau, I was not ambivalent at all. What I said was that NAFTA and other trade deals can be beneficial to the United States because I believe every U.S. worker is as productive as any worker around the world, and we can compete with anybody. And we can't shy away from globalization. We can't draw a moat around us. But what I did say in that same quote, if you look at it, was that the problem is we've been negotiating just looking at corporate profits and what's good for multinationals, and we haven't been looking at what's good for communities here in Ohio, in my home state of Illinois, and across the country. And as president, what I want to be is an advocate on behalf of workers. Look, you know, when I go to these plants, I meet people who are proud of their jobs. They are proud of the products that they've created. They have built brands and profits for their companies. And when they see jobs shipped overseas, and suddenly they are left not just without a job, but without health care, without a pension, and are having to look for $7 an hour jobs at the local fast food joint, that is devastating on them, but it's also devastating on the community. That's not the way that we're going to prosper as we move forward.
Senator, two journalists here in Ohio wrote a piece called Business as Usual, which is very well known, suggesting it wasn't trade or manufacturing jobs that were being lost because of it, but rather business as usual. Lack of patents, lack of innovation, lack of investment. 70% of the PhDs in biology, chemistry, engineering leaving the state.